The desert was endless. Rocks rose like sharp teeth from the sand. The wind blew hot and heavy, carrying dust across the horizon. In this harsh land, a human soldier named Marcus walked with his rifle slung across his back. His muscles were tired, his lips dry, but his eyes stayed sharp. He was trained to survive, and survival meant never letting his guard down. The silence of the desert broke when he heard something unusual. It was not the howl of the wind, nor the sound of shifting sand. It was a faint cry, almost like a whisper carried by the air. Marcus stopped, one hand resting on his weapon. The sound came again, soft but trembling. Someone was out there, hidden among the rocks. He moved carefully, his boots pressing into the sand without a sound. The path narrowed between two jagged cliffs, forming a shadowed passage. There, half hidden against a boulder, he saw her. At first, Marcus thought it was just a child, small and fragile. But when her ears twitched and her glowing violet eyes locked onto him, he knew she was not human. She was an alien warrior, though her body was small and her armor broken. Blood stained her side, and her tail curled weakly behind her. For a moment, both stared at each other. Frozen in the heavy silence, she gripped a tiny blade in her trembling hand, her knuckles pale. Her breathing was quick, shallow, but her eyes burned with the spirit of a fighter. Marcus raised one hand slowly, showing he carried no threat, but the little warrior hissed, her fangs flashing in the dying sunlight. Her legs wobbled as she tried to stand, her tiny chest rising and falling with each painful breath. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her fragile frame. The alien girl lifted the blade higher, but her strength was fading. Her knees buckled, and she nearly collapsed. Without thinking, Marcus reached forward, catching her before she hit the ground. The moment his hand touched her, she shivered. Her whole body trembled, as if the warmth of a human hand was something rare, something forbidden. Her glowing eyes widened, fear mixing with something else: shock, trust, confusion. "You're hurt," Marcus said softly, though she would not understand his words. Still, his tone carried something universal: gentleness. The girl blinked, her weapon slipping from her fingers. Her lips parted, but no words came out, only a weak sound. Marcus pulled a cloth from his belt and pressed it against her wound. The girl winced, but did not push him away. Her trembling hand hovered above his, as if unsure whether to strike or cling. Around them, the desert felt alive with danger. Marcus knew raiders and patrols searched the sands. If they found him with an alien child warrior, both would be doomed. But leaving her here meant death. Her armor was cut, her blood leaving a trail. The predators of this land, both human and alien, would find her quickly. He looked into her eyes again, and something strange happened. For the first time in years of battle, Marcus felt hesitation. He had seen many aliens on the battlefield. He had fought them, hunted them, and lost friends to their weapons. But this girl was different. She was small, broken, yet still burning with a will to fight. And when he touched her, she shook as if he was holding something precious. The wind howled louder. The sky darkened as the sun dipped behind cliffs. Time was running out. Marcus lifted her gently, her light body cradled against his chest. She gasped, claws brushing against his armor. But she did not resist. Her head rested weakly against his shoulder, her breath warm and shallow. With each step, Marcus felt the weight of his choice. He was carrying not just a wounded alien, but a spark of something far greater. In the distance, shadows moved along the rocks. Figures appeared against the dying light. Hunters with cruel eyes scanning the sands. Marcus tightened his grip, pressing himself and the girl against the stone walls. The hunters passed, their voices harsh, speaking in guttural tones. The alien girl stirred in his arms, whispering faint words in her own tongue, though he could not understand. Marcus knew what her eyes were saying. "Please, don't leave me." His heart pounded. His instincts screamed for caution, but something stronger held him in place, the need to protect. He adjusted his grip and began to move deeper into the desert. away from the hunters. The stars began to show above, sharp and bright against the night sky, the girls trembling. Eased as sleep slowly claimed her, Marcus looked down at her fragile form, and for the first time, he wondered if humanity's war had blinded them. Maybe enemies could be more than just enemies. Maybe even a tiny alien warrior could be precious. The desert stretched before them, dangerous and vast, but Marcus walked forward, carrying the girl in his arms, uncertain of where the path would lead, but certain of one thing: he would not let her die tonight. The desert night was colder than Marcus expected. The heat of the day vanished, leaving a sharp chill in the air. He kept moving, his boots crunching against the dry sand, carrying the alien girl close to his chest. Her breathing was shallow, her body light, and though she was injured, she held onto his vest with weak claws. Every step made him wonder if he was making a mistake, but deep inside, he knew leaving her behind would haunt him forever. When the moon rose high, Marcus found shelter beneath an overhanging cliff. There was a hollow space, large enough for a small fire and protection from the wind. He laid the girl gently on the sand, her pale skin glowing under the moonlight, her violet eyes opened slowly, confusion swimming in them. She looked at him like he was both her savior and her enemy. Her lips moved, whispering words he could not understand. Marcus sighed. Sitting nearby, he pulled out his pack, lighting a small fire with practiced hands. The flames flickered, painting shadows across the rocks. The alien girl stared at the fire, as though she had never seen it before. Her eyes reflected the flames, wide and cautious. She tried to push herself up, but pain made her collapse again. Marcus raised a hand slowly, showing her to rest. She tilted her head, studying him. Her ears twitched, her tail curled, and for a long time, neither spoke. There was only the crackle of fire and the cold whisper of wind outside. Marcus reached for his canteen and held it out to her. At first, she bared her small fangs, refusing to trust, but thirst betrayed her, and she took it with shaking hands. Water spilled down her lips as she drank greedily. When she finished, she clutched the canteen tightly, as if it were treasure. Marcus watched, silent. He had seen many enemies, but none like her. She was fierce yet fragile, proud yet trembling. He noticed the small cuts on her body, the way her tiny armor hung broken. She must have been a warrior of her people, even if she looked like a child. And someone, somewhere, had left her to die. The girl's glowing eyes flicked to his rifle, then back to his face. Her claws flexed, her body tense as though expecting betrayal. Marcus set the weapon aside deliberately, pushing it away from reach. Her eyes widened slightly at the gesture, and for the first time, her expression softened. Her lips moved again, speaking words he could not understand. But this time, her tone was not sharp. It was softer, almost like gratitude. He pulled a cloth and began cleaning the wound at her side. She winced, gasping, but did not pull away. When his hand brushed her skin, she trembled again, not from pain, but from the strange warmth of his touch. It was as if no one had ever treated her gently before. Her eyes locked onto his, wide and uncertain, and in that moment, Marcus felt something shift. A bond was forming, fragile like glass but real. The night deepened. Marcus leaned back against the rock, letting exhaustion weigh on him. The girl curled up near the fire, her tail wrapping around her legs. Her eyes remained open, glowing faintly in the dark. She watched him carefully, studying every move. And though no words passed between them, the silence was different now. It was not the silence of enemies, but the silence of two souls learning to trust. Suddenly, the sound of movement came from the distance. Marcus tensed, his hand reaching for his weapon. The girl's ears twitched, and she let out a low hiss. Shadows moved at the edge of the desert, shapes against the moonlight. Voices echoed faintly, rough and cruel, the language of raiders. They were hunting, searching, drawing closer. Marcus quickly put out the fire, plunging them into darkness. The girl whimpered softly, clutching her blade though her hands shook. Marcus crouched beside her, placing a finger to his lips. She froze, her eyes locked onto his, understanding without words. Together, they listened. As footsteps approached, the raiders moved between the rocks. Scanning with their torches, Marcus held his breath, his muscles tense, ready to fight. But the girl surprised him. She reached out with her small hand, gripping his wrist tightly. Her eyes glowed brighter, filled with fear but also trust. The footsteps lingered, then slowly faded into the distance. Marcus exhaled quietly, lowering his weapon. The girl loosened her grip, but did not let go entirely. Her small hand remained on his wrist. Trembling, he looked at her, and in the dim moonlight, she looked almost human, fragile, lost, yet unbroken. When the danger passed, Marcus returned to the fire. He did not relight it, but sat down in the dark. The girl moved closer, surprising him again. Her tiny frame leaned against his arm, seeking warmth. Marcus froze, unsure, but when he felt her heartbeat, weak yet steady, he relaxed. She had chosen to trust him, if only for the night. The bond between them grew in silence. No words, no promises, only the quiet truth of two beings who should have been enemies. But here, in the vast desert night, they were simply two survivors clinging to life. And Marcus knew, deep in his heart, that this fragile bond would change everything. The morning sun rose over the desert like a burning torch. The sand shimmered with heat, though the day had barely begun. Marcus stirred awake, his back aching, from the cold stone wall he had rested against. Beside him, the alien girl was already awake, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon. She had not slept much, that much was clear. Even in her weakened state, she was a warrior, always alert, always ready. Marcus gave her a small nod, a silent way of saying good morning. She tilted her head, her ears twitching, then looked away quickly as if embarrassed. Her tail flicked once, curling around her leg. Despite her tiny frame, there was something sharp and dangerous in her movements. The desert wind carried more than heat, that date carried danger. Voices echoed faintly in the distance, carried over the rocks. The raiders had not given up their search. Marcus packed his gear quickly. He gestured for her to follow, pointing to a narrow canyon ahead. The girl hesitated, clutching her broken blade, then nodded. Her steps were light but shaky, her body still weak from the wound. Marcus slowed his pace so she could keep up. They moved together, shadows among shadows, but danger was never far behind. By midday, the sounds grew louder. The raiders were close, too close. Their shouts bounced off the canyon walls. Hunting calls, mixed with laughter. Marcus pulled the girl into a crevice between rocks, pressing her back gently against the wall. She gasped at the sudden closeness, her eyes wide. Her tiny hands pressed against his chest. Trembling, he raised a finger to his lips, urging her to stay silent. She froze, her breath quick and shallow, through the narrow gap. They saw the hunters pass, armored figures with cruel eyes. Each one carried weapons ready for blood. The girl's ears twitched as the hunters moved on, but one of them stopped. Sniffing the air, he turned, scanning the rocks. Marcus's grip on his rifle tightened, his muscles coiled. If the raider stepped closer, there would be no choice but to fight. The girl pressed closer to Marcus, her claws brushing against his arm, her glowing eyes locked onto his face. She was ready to fight beside him, even if her body was too weak, but luck favored them for the moment. The raider spat into the sand and followed the others. Their voices fading once more, Marcus exhaled slowly, the tension leaving his shoulders. The girl let out a faint hiss, almost like relief. For a moment, they stayed hidden, listening. Then Marcus pulled away, scanning the canyon. The hunt was not over. It had only just begun. They continued deeper into the canyon. Rocks towered above them, sharp and jagged. The air was cooler here, but the shadows were heavy. The girl stumbled once, her wound slowing her down. Marcus caught her before she fell, steadying her with a strong grip. She looked up at him, her cheeks flushing a faint color. Quickly she pulled away. Straightening with stubborn pride, Marcus almost smiled, seeing the fire return to her eyes. The canyon narrowed, forcing them into a tight path. Suddenly, a whistle echoed through the air, sharp and clear. Marcus froze, recognizing the signal. An ambush. Before he could react, shapes appeared above the canyon walls. Raiders, perched like vultures, weapons aimed downward. The girl hissed, her tiny blade flashing in her hand. Marcus raised his rifle, pulling her close behind him. The hunters laughed, voices dripping with cruelty. The trap had been sprung. Blaster fire erupted, searing the air. Marcus rolled to the side, dragging the girl with him. Rocks exploded under the blasts, sending shards flying. The girl darted forward, despite her weakness, her blade slashing at one raider, who dropped from the wall. Her movements were quick, fierce, and shocking. Though small, she fought with the spirit of a predator. Her glowing eyes blazed as she struck, her tail lashing with fury. Marcus covered her, his rifle roaring in bursts, each shot precise and deadly. The canyon became chaos. Dust filled the air, screams echoed off the stone. Marcus felt a surge of respect for the tiny warrior. She moved with instinct, her small body weaving between strikes, but her wound slowed her, and one raider's blade sliced across her shoulder. She cried out, stumbling. Marcus's heart pounded as he rushed to her side, slamming his rifle into the attacker's skull. Blood sprayed the sand, and silence followed. The last raider fled, shouting to the others. The hunt was not finished. They would return in greater numbers. Marcus dropped to one knee, checking the girl's wound. Blood trickled down her arm, staining her pale skin. She tried to pull away, her pride refusing his help, but Marcus caught her wrist gently, pressing a cloth to the cut. She trembled again at his touch, her lips parting as if to protest, but no words came, only a soft sound that was almost trust. He met her glowing eyes, and for the first time, she did not look away. Her blade lowered, her claws relaxed. She let him care for her, if only for this moment. Around them, the canyon was quiet again, but Marcus knew the silence would not last. The raiders would come back, and when they did, he and the tiny warrior would have to face them together. The desert had turned into a hunting ground, and now they were the prey. But in her eyes, Marcus saw more than fear. He saw determination, courage, and something deeper, a bond. Growing stronger with every danger they faced, the hunt had begun, but it was no longer just survival. It was the start of something far greater. The canyon was silent now, but silence in the desert never lasted. Marcus knew the raiders would return, stronger and angrier. He had to keep moving, but the girl was weak, her steps uneven, her small body trembling. Her blade hung loosely in her hand, and her glowing eyes darted nervously at every shadow. Marcus guided her forward, keeping close to the walls, scanning for shelter. Every instinct told him danger was near, but he had no choice. As the sun dipped lower, painting the rocks in gold and blood, Marcus spotted a dark opening, a cave, half hidden by stone. It was risky. Caves could be traps, but the night would soon fall. An open desert meant certain death. He motioned for the girl to follow, and together they slipped inside. The air was cooler, damp, carrying the faint smell of earth. Darkness wrapped around them, broken only by the faint glow of her eyes. Marcus lit a small glow stick from his pack, its green light bouncing against the walls. The cave stretched deep, twisting into the mountain. He led her inside carefully, his rifle ready. The girl moved silently behind him, her small feet making no sound. Even wounded, she was skilled at moving unseen. She was a warrior, no matter how tiny she appeared. They settled deeper inside, where shadows clung heavy and thick. Marcus lowered his pack, motioning for her to rest. She hesitated, her violet eyes fixed on him, searching for something. Then, slowly, she sat, her tail curling around her, her hand pressed to her wound. But her gaze never wavered from his face. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence of the cave was different from the silence of the desert. Here it was, heavy, secretive, filled with unseen eyes and hidden truths. Finally, the girl broke it, whispering words in her own language. Marcus did not understand, but her voice trembled with pain and memory. She touched the scar across her side, then pointed outward, toward the desert. Her eyes darkened, and Marcus understood she had been hunted, not by accident, but by design. Her lips moved again, repeating a word, sharp and bitter. Marcus tilted his head, trying to catch the sound. Slavers, she hissed, the single word in broken human tongue. Marcus froze, his chest tightening. He had fought raiders before, but slavers were worse. They took the weak, the small, and sold them like cattle. The girl's trembling hands clenched into fists, her claws digging into her palms. Her glowing eyes burned with hatred, but also sorrow. Marcus realized then that her clan, her family, had been taken or destroyed. She was alone, a child warrior fighting against an entire world of cruelty. The dawn came quietly, but Marcus felt no peace. The desert sun crept over the cliffs, painting the world in red and gold. Inside the cave, the girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening slowly. She looked exhausted, her wound still raw, yet there was a fire in her gaze. Marcus handed her a piece of dried rations. She sniffed at it suspiciously, then nibbled carefully. It was clear she had never tasted human food before, but hunger won, and soon she was eating in small, quick bites. Marcus watched her closely, feeling a strange pull inside. He had carried many comrades through battles, but never had he felt this way. This was different, like carrying something too precious to break. The bond between them grew stronger with each moment, yet outside the cave, danger circled like wolves. The raiders were not far, and soon they would return, by midday. Marcus decided they had to move. The girl stood shakily, her blade strapped to her side. She walked with stubborn pride. Even though her steps faltered, they left the cave and made their way through the canyon. The silence was heavy, broken only by the whisper of wind. But as they moved deeper into the rocks, Marcus noticed something strange. A trail, fresh footprints in the sand, leading toward an outpost. Marcus frowned, his instincts sharp. The prints were too deliberate, too exposed. A trap, perhaps. Still, he needed water, supplies, maybe even information. The girl tugged at his sleeve, shaking her head. Her glowing eyes warned him not to trust the path. But Marcus pressed forward carefully, his rifle ready. By late afternoon, they reached the outpost. It was hidden between cliffs. A scattering of tents and crude walls. Smoke rose from a fire, and voices carried in the air. Not raiders this time, but humans. Marcus recognized their gear. Mercenaries, survivors like him. He stepped forward, raising his hand in greeting. The girl tensed immediately, pulling at his arm, her ears flat. Her body shook with distrust. But Marcus whispered softly, "It's all right," and walked on. The mercenaries spotted him quickly, weapons raised. Then one man stepped forward, his face weathered, eyes sharp. "Marcus," the man called, disbelief in his voice. Marcus froze, recognizing him, an old comrade, Reyes. A soldier he had once trusted. Relief flooded through him. At last, someone familiar, someone human. Reyes lowered his weapon and strode forward, laughing. "You're alive," he said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "It's been too long, brother." Marcus almost smiled, but the girl shrank behind him, her claws clutching his sleeve. Her glowing eyes darted around nervously. She did not share his relief, and she was right not to. The mercenaries welcomed Marcus with cheers. They gave him water, food, a seat by the fire, but their eyes lingered on the alien girl. Their voices whispered darkly when they thought Marcus wasn't listening. She sat close to him, tense, her tail curled tight. Reyes leaned forward, his smile too sharp. "You brought that with you?" he asked. Marcus stiffened, his hand instinctively resting on his rifle. "She's with me," he answered firmly. Reyes chuckled, shaking his head. "You always had a soft spot," he said. "But this, she's just a prize. Marcus, one we can sell." The girl's ears twitched, and though she did not know the words, she felt the threat. Her glowing eyes widened, her claws digging into the sand. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, hot and dangerous. "She's not for sale," he growled. But Reyes only smirked. "You don't understand, brother. This war leaves no room for kindness. Out here, survival means taking what you can." The tension grew heavy. The mercenaries shifted, their hands brushing weapons. The girl leaned closer to Marcus, her small body trembling. He looked at her, then back at Reyes. The betrayal was clear in his eyes. The man he once trusted was no ally now. He was just another predator circling prey. Suddenly, Reyes gave the order. "Take the girl," he said coldly. In an instant, the mercenaries moved. Marcus stood fast, his rifle raised, blocking their path. The girl let out a fierce hiss, her tiny blade flashing, but there were too many. Torches lit, weapons drawn. Shadows closed in from every side. Marcus's heart pounded, fury burning inside. Reyes looked at him with a sneer. "You're choosing her over us?" he asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She's not a thing. She's not a prize," he said. "She's under my protection." The girl looked up at him then, her glowing eyes wide. She understood enough. He was standing for her, against his own kind. The mercenaries circled. Marcus pulled the girl behind him, his rifle steady. Reyes laughed cruelly. "You'll die for her," he said, but Marcus only tightened his grip. "If I have to," he answered. The fire crackled, the desert wind howled, and the betrayal was complete. The girl pressed closer, her tiny claws gripping his arm, her trembling body hid behind his strength. And in that moment, Marcus knew there was no turning back. The hunters had changed. The faces were different, but the danger was the same. They were alone again, surrounded by enemies, but he would fight. Not for survival alone, but for the promise he made, to protect her no matter the cost. The night was alive with fire and steel. The mercenaries closed in, their eyes glinting with greed. Reyes stood at the center, his smirk cold and sharp. Marcus held his rifle steady, the alien girl clinging to his arm. Her glowing violet eyes burned with fear and anger. She was trembling, but not with weakness, with the will to fight. The desert wind whipped sand into the air. Torches flickered. Shadows danced across stone walls. Marcus scanned the circle forming around them. Too many enemies, too little ground to move. The girl pressed against him, her blade shaking in her small hand. She hissed low, her ears flat, her tail stiff. Marcus leaned down, whispering softly, "Stay close, no matter what." Reyes raised his arm, giving the order. The mercenaries surged forward. Marcus fired, his rifle roaring with bursts of light. The first attacker fell, sand stained red beneath him. The girl darted forward, faster than they expected. Her blade slashed across another man's leg, dropping him to the ground. Her small body moved with speed, her glowing eyes fierce. But Marcus saw the cost. Her wound reopened, blood trailing down her side. The mercenaries pressed harder. Marcus slammed his rifle against one man's face, spinning to fire at another. Every move was survival, every breath heavy with rage. He fought not for glory, not for war, but for her. The girl fought beside him, her tiny frame weaving between blades. She was fragile, but deadly, a spark of fire refusing to die. Together, they were not prey anymore. They were storm and flame, but numbers weighed heavy. Marcus's rifle clicked empty. He swung it like a club, smashing into an enemy's chest. The girl cried out as a mercenary grabbed her arm, dragging her back. Her blade clattered to the sand. Marcus's heart thundered as he lunged forward, his fist breaking the man's jaw. He pulled her free, holding her close. Her body shook, but her eyes still burned bright. She was not giving up. Not while he still stood. Reyes stepped forward now, his sword glinting under torchlight. You're stubborn, Marcus, he sneered, but stubborn men break first. Marcus met his eyes, breathing hard. Then, you don't know me, he growled. The girl hissed, pressing against Marcus's side, ready to fight, even with blood staining her armor. The circle tightened again. The last stand was here. No escape, no retreat. Marcus and the girl fought back to back. Blades clashed, fists struck, blood sprayed across the sand. Every moment was a heartbeat closer to death, yet every strike, every breath bound them stronger. The girl's claws tore across one mercenary's face. Marcus's fists crushed another. Still they came, shadows against the fire. And still, the two stood together. But strength has limits. Marcus felt his arms growing heavy, his vision blurring. The girl stumbled, collapsing to her knees, her tiny body shaking, her glowing eyes dimming. Marcus dropped beside her, shielding her with his own body. Reyes stepped closer, sword raised. This is the end, he said coldly. Marcus held the girl tighter, his voice a whisper. Not while I breathe. The desert wind howled like a beast. Sand lifted into the air, swirling around them. The torches flickered. The fire bent. The mercenaries hesitated, shielding their eyes from the sudden storm. The girl stirred in Marcus's arms, her hand pressing weakly against his chest. Her eyes glowed brighter, not with fear, but with something deeper. She whispered in her tongue, the words foreign yet powerful. Marcus felt her trembling stop, her body steady against his. It was as if she was passing her strength into him. With a roar, Marcus surged to his feet. Reyes swung his sword, but Marcus caught his arm, twisting it hard. The blade dropped into the sand. Marcus drove his fist into Reyes's chest, sending him sprawling. The mercenaries faltered, their leader down, their courage breaking. The girl rose beside Marcus, her blade lifted once more. Her small frame glowed in the storm of sand, her eyes blazing like fire. She hissed at the mercenaries, her voice sharp and deadly, and for the first time, they stepped back. The storm howled, louder, tearing torches from hands. Darkness swallowed the outpost. Marcus stood tall, the girl leaning against him. Together, they were unbroken. Reyes lay on the sand, gasping, his men retreating into the night. The battle was over, but the war inside their hearts burned on. Marcus knelt, holding the girl as she sagged against him. Her blade slipped from her fingers, her eyes half closed. She whispered softly, words he could not understand, but he knew their meaning. She trusted him. She believed in him. He brushed her hair back, his voice low and steady. You're safe now. I've got you. The desert lay silent once more, bodies scattered, blood soaking the sand. The fire had died, leaving only smoke and shadow. Marcus carried the girl in his arms, her weight light, but heavy with meaning. The last stand had ended, but their journey was not. The bond they forged in blood and fire was unbreakable, and together, they would face whatever came next. The night after the battle was heavy with silence. The fire was gone, the mercenaries scattered. Their leader, broken in the sand, Marcus, stood in the ruins of the outpost, holding the alien girl close to his chest. Her body was weak, her breaths shallow, her blood staining his shirt. She was still alive, but only just, and every step he took felt like walking on the edge of despair. The desert stretched before him, endless and cruel. The stars burned sharp above, cold watchers of the fight below. Marcus carried her through the night, his arms steady, despite his exhaustion. She stirred sometimes, whispering words in her strange tongue. He did not know the meaning, but the tone was soft, fragile, almost like trust. Each time she whispered, he whispered back. I'm here. By dawn, he found another cave, a shallow one, hidden among rocks. He laid her down gently, brushing sand from her face. Her glowing violet eyes fluttered, open, weak but alive. She looked at him, her lips trembling as if to speak. Her small hand lifted, pressing lightly against his chest. Her claws did not dig in this time, they rested, fragile and soft. Marcus caught her hand with his own, holding it tightly. "You'll make it," he said firmly, though his voice cracked. The girl closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Her chest rose and fell, in rhythm with his own. For a moment, he allowed himself to rest, his back against the cave wall. He thought of Reyes, of betrayal, of the mercenaries who had fled. They would return, or others would. The desert was never empty, but when Marcus looked at her face, pale and beautiful under the morning light, he knew he could not stop. Protecting her was more than survival now. It was his purpose, his promise. Hours passed, the cave filled with silence. The girl awoke again, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her lips moved, forming a word in broken human tongue. "Why?" she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Marcus blinked, surprised she had spoken in his language. He leaned closer, his voice gentle. "Because you're precious," he answered. Her eyes widened, shimmering with tears. She trembled, not from fear this time, but from something deeper. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a weapon, not as a slave, not as prey, but as something valuable, something worth saving. The bond between them grew heavier, stronger, unspoken yet real. She clung to his arm, her claws no longer sharp but gentle. Marcus tightened his grip, his heart steady with resolve. Whatever came, he would not let her go. By afternoon, the desert stirred again. Voices echoed faintly, raiders searching, hunters prowling. Marcus prepared his rifle, ready for another fight, but the girl shook her head weakly, pulling at his sleeve. Her glowing eyes pointed toward a narrow passage deeper in the cave. Marcus followed her lead, carrying her through twisting stone. The cave widened into a chamber, filled with strange carvings on the walls. Symbols of her people, drawn long ago. The girl reached out, touching the marks, her lips whispering names, names of those long gone. Her clan, her family. Tears slid down her cheeks as she pressed her forehead to the wall. Marcus stood behind her, silent, letting her grieve. She was not just a warrior, not just a survivor. She was the last echo of something beautiful that had been broken. When she turned back to him, her face was streaked with tears, but in her eyes, he saw something fierce, not just sorrow, but strength. She placed her hand on his chest again, her voice trembling. "You stay," she whispered. Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Always," he said. The shadows in the cave seemed less heavy then, the desert wind outside quieter. For the first time since their meeting, the girl leaned fully into his arms, her tiny frame resting against him, her trust complete. Marcus wrapped his arms around her. He did not see her as an enemy anymore, nor as a stranger. He saw her for what she truly was, precious beyond measure. The night returned, the stars burning. Above once more, Marcus sat with the girl in his arms, his eyes on the horizon. The war was still out there. The raiders would still come, but the bond they shared now was stronger than fear. It was a promise carved in blood and fire. He had found her trembling in the sand, a tiny warrior with no hope, and now she was no longer alone. Together, they would face the desert, the hunters, even the darkness itself. As she drifted into sleep, her hand still gripping his, Marcus whispered softly into the silence, "You're not just a warrior, you're my reason to fight." Her ears twitched faintly, her lips curling into the faintest smile. The desert stretched forever, but Marcus no longer felt lost. He carried something greater than survival. He carried her, and in that endless desert, under stars, cold and eternal, a human soldier and a tiny alien warrior found something no war could break. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than blood, precious beyond measure.